Ever since I was younger, I've heard people call my name, whether it be somewhere rural or in my home. It's constantly happened, and it's starting to freak me out. Let me give you a bit of context. I am a 17-year-old female. I live in Florida and have always been aware of my Native American culture, even though I'm not of that heritage myself. This all started when I was very young. The first instance of this happening was when I was living with my grandmother. Her and I were very close. I was wide awake in bed, unable to sleep, with her to my right. There's no doubt in my mind that she was deeply asleep, only a few inches from me. Every television in the house was off, and the only other person in the house was my grandfather asleep in his room. Then very clearly and loudly I heard my grandmother call me from the kitchen, almost how you'd called someone for dinner. I know it's common to hear your name being called mistakenly, but I did more research on this as a teen, and apparently when you hear your name being called this loud, you're supposed to reject it. Not knowing this, I just huddled closer to my grandmother and kept my eyes locked on the open door. The second instance was around 13 or 14 when my father took me on a trip to Las Vegas. We visited some part of the Grand Canyon, and while my family were waiting in line for a skywalk bridge, we paid for a tour. I wandered around the edge a good distance away from my family, and decided to yell my name into the canyon to hear my echo. When it came back to me, it sounded distorted, almost like my grandmother had yelled my name back. It might have not been my grandmother, but it was very similar. Nonetheless, just the fact that it was distorted was enough to scare me a little. I don't put much weight into this experience, as it could have just been my own voice coming back weirdly. The next event happened when I was 13. It was the most terrifying one I've ever had. This is the closest I've ever been to whatever this thing is, and proves my point that it's mimicking people. I was on a vacation with my family in Key West, and had rented a home. I invited my best friend, called Ash, to stay with us. On the third day, we decided to skip out on a boating trip and mooch off the house owner's Netflix all day. At about the 5th episode of whatever we were watching, we decided on a snack refill and bathroom break. We paused the television and make our way to the kitchen. I believe that Ash had followed me into the kitchen and leaned on the island while I prepared some chips with my back turned to her. I held a full-on conversation with whatever the thing was, and even looked back at her on the phone. I fully had no doubt in my mind I was talking and looking at Ash on her phone. She even held it in this specific way that Ash does. I turned my back for a split second to pick up the bowls and suggested we head back to the couch, when I see Ash, or the real Ash anyway, walk out the bathroom, which was a solid 30 feet away. My body immediately went cold, and the first thing I asked her was how she got to the bathroom in and out without me hearing. She gave me the strangest look and told me she's been in there the whole time since we got up. This is where I start freaking out and insist that I had just been talking to her and even physically saw her. She joked about doppelgangers and how she was going to die. I quickly suggested we get out of the house and walk around the neighborhood. She then informed me she had gotten her period while she was in the bathroom, at the same time I was talking to whatever it was. We walked around until my mum called me that she was back in the house. We're still best friends to this day, and have been for 11 years. And I've asked her about it, and she said she didn't even hear me speaking with anyone at all. Now at this point you might think I'm crazy, but for this next one I have witnesses. I was on a vacation near the Great Smoky Mountains, just a little west in Surreyville, Tennessee. We had our previous reservations cancelled, so we took this little rundown cabin owned by a local woman. Now we got there late at night, and during the moment we all stepped out the car, the first thing we heard was a man's voice, "Hey neighbours," coming from one of the cabins to our left, that was higher up on the mountain than we were. We couldn't see the cabin really, just a road that led further up, and we all assumed he could see us, but we not him. Probably some guy on his balcony, we thought. My friendly stepdad yelled, "Hey!" and waved up towards the direction the sound came from. It wouldn't have been weird if this didn't happen every time we stepped out the cabin or car. My family completely wrote it off as some type of hospitality we were not used to in Miami. Retelling it, my brother and my friends agreed it was weird. I did hear constant footsteps around the cabin at night and some outside my window. But I didn't give it much thought since wildlife is a thing in the woods. Just something I thought I should mention. The thing that really propelled me into researching what the hell was happening to me was when I was having a photo shoot in the woods behind the cabin, and both my brother, sister, and I heard something calling my name deeper in the woods. Since I was with my younger siblings, I went into a full big sister protection mode and almost threw them back down the little slope we had to climb to get to the woods. We were all crapping ourselves from how clear it was and how we all pinpointed it was coming from the deeper woods and nowhere near the cabin. This was during the day, and we were all so thrown by this that we stayed in for the rest of the trip. We all agreed it was a woman's voice, and the first thing I asked my mum when we went outside was, "Did you call me?" She had been lounging in her room with my stepdad all day, trusting that I could take care of the younger ones just outside the cabin. She saw how freaked out the kids were, and we didn't really go outside at night for the rest of our trip. I think I reacted to this quite badly, because I had kids to take care of and I can tell that they were terrified out there. The voice sounded like someone was looking for me or calling me back somewhere. With no knowledge of what this could have been, I finally decided to look into things when I turned 17. I had no previous knowledge of Wendigos or skinwalkers or anything cryptic, only ghost investigation shows. I'm desperate for answers, because at this point I'm constantly thinking about it and driving myself into rabbit holes of information, myths, and legends.